Hello. So today I'm going to be talking about why I feel like Vecna is not the main villain and I guess my facts behind it. Because I feel like collectively we all know, people who watch Stranger Things, that the Mind Flayer is going to be a villain. And we all know this because we've had actual people say it that are a part of the show, like Noah Schnapp, accidentally saying it in interviews. And we have the scene in the cave where, on the show version of Stranger Things, we know that what's in the briefcase, Henry opens up. We know that that's probably going to be the Mind Flayer. And so we do kind of already know this. However, I think like Dustin, Lucas, um, and Mike and Will, I feel like they all are, in order to solve this all, they're looking at how to defeat Vecna. But this is why today I'm going to be saying why I think this is such the wrong approach and why I think this will be talked about in the finale that's coming out today. So, to start off with, in season 2, the Mind Flayer slowly possessed Will, and you can see how he slowly has less ideas that are his own. He also spies for Vecna, and we figure out in season 5 he was making tunnels while he was sleeping. Slowly and slowly, he becomes less like himself. When he becomes less like himself, I think we can see a connection in this with Henry. Henry Creel, he slowly kind of loses humanity in a way. I think a lot of us think this is due to Eleven defeating him in the Rainbow Room, but before this, you can very much see the same sort of um project, like, what is it leading up to, kind of. So you see when he's younger, he's like more vulnerable. Before he even meets the Mind Flayer, as far as we know, he had no powers. But slowly we see him kind of get taken over by the Mind Flayer. We don't see a lot of clips of this, but slowly you can see that even the actor Jamie Baller's direction with Vecna is that he kind of slowly turns into Vecna when he becomes less and less like a human, less and less like Henry. And I think that this could be due to the Mind Flayer. Ever since the Mind Flayer took over, Vecna has absolutely no control over what he's doing, similar to Will. At a certain point, even though he's spying and he's like not himself towards the end of season 2, all collectively, we all know that's not in his control. And I really do feel like it's the same for Henry. Now, Vecna, I'm going to be referring to as Vecna, I feel like is the Henry that was completely taken over by the Mind Flayer. And I feel like Vecna is definitely almost is the same amount of victim as maybe Will is. Henry does say that he always resented his family and that's why he did terrible things to them. That was definitely like Vecna. That was definitely the Mind Flayer. And so we can see that even when Will gets kind of in this like exorcist scene, you see that the Mind Flayer kind of energy, I'll call it, gets released. We see in season 5 it technically didn't, because he still has something to work with that gives him powers. And because Vecna let him leave, he's ever since then, as we see in the end of season 1 when he's like coughing up something that's very much um, hive mind coded, you can see that he kind of, ever since then, is fully controlled by the Mind Flayer. And I think that maybe, this is a theory, the Mind Flayer can and will fully control Will whenever he wants. I feel like he'll wait till the last moment to show that he has control, or that it has control over him no matter what. Like, it might be letting Will take over, because when Will's fighting Vecna, Vecna is clearly affected by Will. But the thing is, what's fueling Will is the same thing that's fueling Vecna, in my theory. And I think that because the Stranger Things kids, they're not focusing on what's fueling Vecna and what's fueling Will. And so I feel like at the last moment, they're going to realize that the Mind Flayer is what they actually should be fighting. Because the Mind Flayer can create another Vecna just like that. And that's what we've seen and noticed. And we also see that all the Demogorgons and stuff, they're powered by the same sort of energy that took over Vecna and Will, which comes from the Mind Flayer. And so I really do feel like if the Mind Flayer got destroyed, then Demogorgons would get destroyed, Demo Dogs, all the other stuff. And so I think that this is a major plot discovery that I feel could end up being the detriment to the characters in the show. I think we forget that the Mind Flayer is called the Mind Flayer. He takes over people's minds. And I have a theory that I don't necessarily know is fully true, but when we see that Will is in his coming out scene is literally talking about memories that could never be his, I feel like this could be maybe because the Mind Flayer takes over so much people's minds that perhaps sometimes there's some crossover, and maybe the parts of Will that that Will does believe in, maybe the Mind Flayer is kind of mixing those stuff up. Because again, the Mind Flayer is still a part of Will, which we see in season 5. And so I really do feel like this could be the detriment of Will. And also, Vecna never said that he stopped spying on Will. Vecna, you can kind of see that there was like sort of a point where maybe like the spying could have stopped, but I really do feel like the Mind Flayer could still be using um, Will as a spying point. Also, one more thing that I want to touch up on is the fact that Vecna literally told Will, and again, I don't know if this is the Mind Flayer or if this is a part of Henry, but told Will that he didn't know the weakness of using children as like sources of power. He didn't know this originally. And so it leads you to question why he originally did this. And he does say that Henry and Will are very similar, and that could be why. But I kind of believe that maybe the Mind Flayer had something in mind for this. I feel like he had some sort of plan that perhaps Henry had to follow. And honestly, that this is will be talked about in just a couple hours when this drops. And so, yeah, I hope this theory helps. Also, something quick that I wanted to say was I did think about it and realized that Henry still exists. He still has memories, which we see when Holly and Max are in the mindscape. And you see the memory of the cave, and Henry's still deeply scared of it. Now, I would say if he was fully possessed by the Mind Flayer, I don't think the Mind Flayer would be scared about a memory from Henry's memory, if that makes sense. So I do feel like there's still hope for Henry to, I don't know, maybe get the Mind Flayer taken out of him or reconnect with his actual self, even though he was possessed when he was very, very young. So, yeah. Because, I mean, it does seem like there's still a chance. There's still hope. Technically, I don't know for sure if this theory will check out, but I do feel like it has some realistic elements in it. And so, yeah, we'll see in an hour if it is real, if it is not. And so, yeah, bye guys. Enjoy Stranger Things finale.